Okay, so today we're going to start learning how to factor with finding the GCF and factoring by grouping. Okay. So our first thing is the greatest common factor. You might be familiar with this. We've probably seen this before. The greatest monomial that a polynomial is divisible by. That's what a GCF is. So if you look at this polynomial, what can all terms of 4x cubed minus 4x squared plus 6x be divided by? Okay. 2. Okay. So we're going to start by putting it in our box. Okay. And this time, instead of given the length of the sides like we were when we were multiplying, we're given the area of the whole box. So the area of this box is 4x cubed. The area of this is negative 4x squared. And the area of this is 6x. Okay. What we want to find is the length of the sides. Okay. So we find the biggest number that they can all be divided by, which was 2. What else do they have in common? What do they all have? An x, right? So they can all also be divided by x. Then you divide. Okay. We're going to do 4x cubed divided by the 2x. That's what we're doing. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. And then x cubed divided by x. Remember, you subtract the exponents. Since the x cubed is on top, it's bigger. We move the 1 to the top and subtract and get x squared. So I'm just taking away an x. Any questions over that? We're going to do the same thing. This is going to be negative 4x squared. And we're going to divide it by 2x. And then negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And again, I'm going to move this up and subtract an x and just get left with x. Any questions so far? Okay, next one, last. We're going to take that 6x and divide it by the 2x. Okay. 6 divided by 2 is 3, positive 3. And then the x divided by x is 1. So we're just left with the 3. Okay. So this right here is what we call the GCF. And this is the leftovers. So what we found, the length of the sides were 2x times the 2x squared minus 2x plus 3. Any questions over that? Okay, now find the GCF of the following polynomials. So again, we're going to start with a box. This is the area of all the little pieces. Okay, so step 1 is going to be find the largest number all terms can be divided by. That's our first step. Okay. In class, what can 10, 15, and negative 20 all be divided by? 5. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is find smallest exponent of the variable. So what's the smallest exponent we have here? Oh, that should be a 2, and I didn't write it in. 2. Okay. So my smallest exponent is the x squared. So that's what I can pull out as the x squared. So my smallest exponent is the x squared. Does that make sense? And then we're going to divide them all. Okay. So 10 divided by 5 is just 2. And then x to the 4th divided by x squared, I just take away 2 from it, and I'm going to get x squared. Does that make sense? Do the same thing with the next term. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and it's a positive 3. And then I have my x squared. X cubed divided by x squared, I subtract it, and I just get x to the 1st power. I don't need to write in the first? Yes.
So I understand the 5, like, even if it's put 5 squared, is that, like, showing what's the next after it?
So you're, again, to figure out which variable they all can be divided by, you're going to look for the smallest exponent of the variable.
Well, I was thinking, like, the exponent, so, like, the last equation had only one x.
It had x squared.
The one above it, the example that you put.
This one?
It was 2x. The example above.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was 2x. So it means no exponent. But A used x2, and I was wondering.
So the 6 had an x, so that's the smallest one with an exponent. So that's why it was the x. Does that make sense? Okay. So then the last one, we're going to divide the last one. So negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. And then x squared, I subtract it. And you get x to the 0 power. What's x to the 0 power? 1. So your x's just become 1. So 4 times 1 is 4. Okay, so my GCF is the 5 x squared. And then my leftovers are the 2x squared plus 3x minus 4. Now, if I were to distribute that 5x squared, I would get this area. Does that make sense? Okay. I want you guys to try the next one in your pairs. Okay, class, what did we get for the GCF? 4. Good. Can we factor out the 4? Let's write this in. Okay, Scarlett, what'd you get for the leftovers then? What went on top? Squared. Negative 3x plus 5. Okay, notice not all 3 of them had an x, so you can't pull out an x. You can only pull out an x if all 3 of them or all the terms have that variable. So the smallest amount of exponents here is nothing, is 0. So we don't have, the GCF is just 4. So our factors then, our GCF is 4. And then the 2x squared minus 3x plus 5. Any questions over that? Okay. You see again on your own. That's what was the GCF? Oh, good. It's just 36x squared and negative 16. They can both be divided by 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9x squared. And 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. I couldn't pull out an x because the 16 doesn't have an x. So it's just 4 times 9x squared minus 4. Any questions over that? Okay. Next one is slightly different. So we started doing it, good job, but just make sure you have this down. So it's negative 18x to the 4th, negative 12x squared cubed, sorry, and 36x squared. If the first term is negative, then the GCF should be negative. Okay, very important. If that first term is negative, you want the GCF to be negative. So we want to figure out what they can all be divided by. Dakota, what can they all be divided by? Okay, and so it's going to be a negative 6. And then what's the smallest amount of variables? X squared. Okay, so I'm going to pull out negative 6x squared as the GCF. And then divide it. So negative 18 divided by negative 6 is positive 3. I take away 2 and I get x squared. So 3x squared is the first term. Negative 12 divided by negative 6 is a positive 2. I subtract this and get x. And then 36 divided by negative 6 is a negative 6. I subtract it, and the x's will just cancel out, become 0. X to the 0 power is 1. So my GCF here is negative 6x squared, and then times 3x squared plus 2x minus 6. Those are the length of the sides of that rectangle. Any questions? How are we doing here? Pretty easy? Okay, now we're going to teach you how to factor by grouping. Factor by grouping is when you have 4 terms. There must be 4 terms. If there's 4 terms, then you try and factor by grouping. Okay. The first thing you need to do, look for, let's do this, for a GCF of all the terms. Okay, is there a GCF? Something that they can all be divided by? No, right? 1, but we want something other than 1. Okay. Okay, other than 1. So then we're going to create our box. And since there's 4 terms, We're going to create 4 terms here. So it's x cubed, 4x squared, 5x, and 20. Okay, so next we're going to do find the GCF of each row and column. So here is my row. What is the GCF there? Any ideas, class? Okay, there's, yeah?
X2.
X squared. Very good. Okay, then we do the same thing here. What's the GCF here? 5. Okay, so I just found the GCF of the 2 rows. Now let's find the GCF of the column. X cubed and 5x, what do they have in common? Just an x. Okay, what about 4x squared and 20? 4. And it's a positive 4, so I'm plus 4. Okay. Last step is going to be check. To make sure the opposite sides match. So we're going to just check by factoring out this 5. When I factor the 5 from this row, we should get x plus 4 because these two should match, right? Top and bottom of a rectangle matches, and the opposite sides here should match as well. So if I factor out this 5, I get left with x here. 5x divided by 5 should be x. And then 20 divided by 5 should be positive 4. They match, right? Since they match, I've done this correctly. Now all I care about, the factors here, are the length of the sides. So I have my length of the side as being x squared plus the 5. And the length of the other side is the x plus 4. Any questions over that? We're all good? Okay, moving to the other one. I'm going to have you guys do those in your pairs. Okay, when you're doing this, this is x cubed minus 11x squared minus 9x and 99. So most of you guys were able to pull out. This was an x squared for these two. Okay. And then this right here. That first term is negative, right? So what should we pull out? Negative 9. Okay, so you have to pull out the negative 9 there. Okay, when you're doing that, then you're going to go this way. Oopsie. Then you're going to go this way. And you can pull out an x. And then this way. Again, that first term is negative. So we're going to pull out, class, negative 11. We're going to check to make sure that bottom number will match. So I'm going to divide. Negative 9 divided by negative 9 is positive 1x. Yes?
Why is it that whenever we do like -9, 299, why can't it be like -11? Or is it always like the first term?
If that first term is negative, you're pulling out a negative number. Does that make sense? You're pulling out.
So like the first term in general does have to be like either negative or positive, whatever.
Yes, whatever.
If it's positive 9,
Then you,
still 99, then it would just be 9.
yeah, maybe a positive. So whatever, these two should match the signs. Okay, and then 99 divided by negative 9 should give me the negative 11. Okay, and again, these two match. If I didn't pull out a negative, then those wouldn't match and they wouldn't be factored correctly. I'd be missing a negative along the way. So my factors are the x minus 11. And then the x squared minus 9. Those are the length of the sides. Any questions over that? Doing okay? Okay, next one. So we have 6x cubed, negative 3x squared, 8x, and negative 4. We're going to go this way. 6 and 3, what can they both be divided by? 3. And the smallest amount of x's between those two? X squared. Okay. And then I'm going to divide this. 6 can go in there 2 times, and then x. And then 3 divided by 3, and x squared. Okay, what's negative 3 divided by 3? Negative 1. And then the x squareds will cancel out. Okay. Negative 3x squared divided by negative 3x squared equals, sorry, by positive 3x squared equals 1. Not 0, not nothing, it's 1. Okay? Let's do the same thing here. What can they both be divided by? Okay, 4. Okay. And then 8 divided by 4 is 2x. And negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. Then we do this way. Check our work. What is the GCF between 6 and 8? 2. And they have 1 x in common. So the GCF was the 2x right here, which is what I already have. And then negative 3 and negative 4, there's nothing in common. So I have to pull out a negative number. The GCF is going to be negative. And so it must be negative 1. Does that make sense? Okay, so these two, we want to make sure they match. And they do. So my factors are the 3x squared and the positive 4. And then 2x minus 1. Length of my sides. Any questions over that? Yes? Order doesn't matter. So I could do or 2x minus 1 times 3x squared plus 4. The order in which I multiply doesn't matter. That's the commutative property of multiplication. Just like I could add 2 and 5 and 5 and 2 and it'd be the same number. I can multiply two things and I get the same answer. Okay, do H. See if you guys can get H.